Hello and welcome back. My name is Matt Bailey. I'm the National Ambassador for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to have a dram tonight and talk a little bit about the one thing I wanted to mention, which I've been questioned on at a few tastings recently. I'm going to be broadcasting to YouTube tonight and live on Instagram. YouTube will get this one a little bit later on. Instagram are getting it right now, of course. I'm going to talk about a couple of things to do with something I've mentioned at a few tastings recently that isn't really something that's has often had a bit of a bemusement from some people in the audience. And I've mentioned some of the whiskies that I've tried have had what I like to call a diesel note to them. Now that's often turned up a few noses like, ooh, that's not a desirable character in a whiskey. I beg to differ. We've had some whiskies recently which are what I would call more of the symphonic masterpieces rather than the rock and roll casks. But we also had the rock and roll ones as well, which has been great. If you look at something like cask 29.260, which was recently released, which was a 19-year-old Oloroso Isla whiskey. It was mental. It was such a huge whiskey. It had everything. It had peat. It had sherry. It was cask strength. It was single cask. It was everything you want in a big rock and roll whiskey, as I call it. What it didn't have was what it was the opposite of is often symphonic masterpieces, as I like to say. Whiskies that are a bit like sleeper casks that you might find that are a bit different from the rock and roll. And they have something different to offer in that regard as well. And I'm going to have a taste tonight of 77.48. Bountiful Biscuit Bisque is the name on that one there. I'm going to hold that up for all to see there. That one there it's a 10-year-old single cask distilled in August 2007, bottled 2017 or probably early 18 presumably. From a refill ex-bourbon hogshead, 58.7% from distillery 77. I'm going to be straight up with you. There's nothing too sexy about distillery 77. It's a pretty workhorse distillery for Diageo, and you don't see much of it as single cask. You see a lot of it as single malt and a lot of it as blending, but not much as single cask. And when I first tasted this cask in particular, I was like, wow, that is actually phenomenal. That's a real sleeper cask that people often overlook because it's not a rock and roll cask. And not a rock and roll distillery by any means either. So I hope I'm getting that point across. But the note that I made mention of this one is that it has a diesel note to it. Now that may seem like an undesirable characteristic, but I promise you it's not. It's something that is actually quite desirable in a whiskey. Is that, for me anyway, and it's all very subjective of course, is a diesel note to that dram. What I mean by that is that it's that sort of diesel fume that you get at like a country fuel station. That sort of like, there's a farm nearby. That sort of like livestock smell, a bit of that sort of beef stock, a bit of that diesel fume smell that you get in a whiskey. And it's unexpectedly in this, which is why it actually very aptly fits in the spicy and dry category. I get that diesel fume note in a really desirable way through some of our 93s, through some of our 29s, some of our 27s. Different distilleries have it, and including this one here as well, which is a dearly departed 44.93. It's a tipple of the Bramble Hunter. I remember this dram very fondly. It was a spicy and dry 11-year-old recharred hogshead from Distillery 44. That was lovely. I think we featured that at the bread and whiskey night at the brasserie. I'd have to check my notes, but I got mentioned about that tasting just last night at an event I was at in Katoomba, of all places. So this is and this kind of reminds me, it's the same flavour profile, totally different whiskey, obviously being a single cask and also a different distillery, but it's a totally different profile altogether. That's delightful. It's truly delightful. I've tried this whiskey twice now, once neat and once with water. I recommend without the water, if I'm being completely honest. It doesn't need it. 58.7 sounds high. It is high, it is cask strength, but it doesn't need any water added. And if you're watching this and you do want a bottle of this, there's only 2 left on the website. It's part of, I think it was the July outturn. I have to double check the notes on that as well. I'm going to put that down for a moment. Just to wrap up, it's only a short one tonight. The latest Unfiltered has been printed and is ready to go. So that's going to be going out to you as members. I'm going to hold that up over the YouTube just here for a second. That's going to be going out for you for members. I'd say it's in the next mail out, so that'll be in September mail out, that one. And issue 43, and I think I posted this online already, but I thought it was kind of cool. I've been turned into a caricature in this issue, along with Ian Buxton and Ewan Campbell there. So a very cool little piece of artistry there. I was very happy to be drawn up for that one. I'm going to say goodbye to Instagram now. Thank you everyone who tuned in, and I'm going to pop this up on YouTube in the next hour or so, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye for now.